If I asked you to think about your greatest fear, what types of things would come to mind? Now, I know that for me personally, my biggest fears have changed over time. When I was a child, my biggest fear was losing my mother to a drug overdose. And I was forced to face that fear head on when we found her dead in our home when I was just 17 years old. However, as an adult, this has since shifted for me once again. As I stand before you today, my biggest fear as an emerging leader is causing harm to the people that I am entrusted with. Now, why is this, you may ask? Well, it's because I have become all too familiar with the politics and the power dynamics at play within institutions, even at this early stage of my life and career. I have experienced firsthand the damage that institutional abuse can do after being harmed at the hands of professionals and authority figures in institutions across the board. Institutional abuse occurs when a person is harmed and mistreated by a system of power, which can include a corporation, hospital, healthcare facility, school, or religious organization. However, on the other side of this, secondary abuse occurs when the institution responds to an individual's complaint of mistreatment by covering up the abuse, using the victim's reactions against them, otherwise known as reactive abuse, or silencing, shaming, disparaging, or retaliating against the victim, otherwise known as victim blaming, rather than addressing the complaint and holding the perpetrator accountable. This can go on to cause post-traumatic stress disorder or re-traumatize those who already have a history of trauma and abuse. And this is exactly what happened to me. One of the most heartbreaking experiences of my entire life was on the day of my college commencement ceremony. I showed up there, elated, ready to be honored as a Truman Scholar and an outstanding graduate. However, the excitement and the pride that you see here in these photos very quickly turned into deep grief and crippling confusion, as I found myself on the receiving end of treatment that I did not understand and I definitely did not deserve. Suddenly, the fact that I had just graduated summa cum laude from my dream school that I traveled 2,500 miles across the country to attend didn't seem to matter all that much to me anymore. I left there that day crying, humiliated, and completely crushed. I cried for many months to come, and I would be lying if I told you that I didn't still cry, even sometimes today. Now, there are many forms of abuse that have become normalized within institutions, but the types that I endured were the more insidious types, like emotional, psychological, and spiritual abuse. I have been exploited, disrespected, slandered, silenced, and grossly mishandled by people in positions of power and authority, people who I truly loved and valued. These very people went on to ignore my cries for help and watch me suffer, despite having the ability to step up and do something about it. They turned a blind eye to my pain, and this, in a leadership role, is not acceptable. What is even worse, though, is when the leaders and the professionals in these institutions all stand together, protecting and defending one another, while the people that they are supposed to care for are ignored, isolated, and sometimes even victimized. Now, the first time that I experienced something like this, I thought for sure that it was a freak incident. The second time felt like a horrible case of deja vu. However, the third and final time, and the most painful, I was forced to step out of denial and face reality head-on, despite how painful it was. Healthcare facilities, religious organizations, and, unfortunately, even academia Can we survive in these environments long term without abandoning our moral compass and becoming completely corrupted by the system? When is it that integrity became such a lost virtue? And how can we all work together to regain it for the good of our whole society? Now, when I look back, I can see that the bystanders in these instances were actually far worse than the original perpetrators. I understand now that the common denominator was actually the institutions for which they worked. It was their colleagues, departments, and organizations that ultimately went on to drive the nail straight into the coffin. As quickly as these individuals added value to my life, they stripped it away from me. When the tables turned and they and their organizations became the source of my pain and distress, they were nowhere to be found. When confronted with the mistakes that they had made, they threw me away like garbage. They devalued me before discarding me like a crumpled up piece of yesterday's newspaper. Now, as I heal from the trauma, I am starting to see that institutionalized abuse is far too common in our society. Those who are responsible are protected and hidden behind degrees, fancy titles, powerful organizations, and sometimes even the law. Meanwhile, the people who recognize the abuse and have the courage to step up and ask for help are very conveniently scapegoated, gaslit, pushed out, and made out to be the problem. When is it that we stopped prioritizing the well-being of those that we are called to serve? And why are we so quick to turn a blind eye to human suffering when this is the exact opposite of what we are supposed to do, believe, and promote as leaders? Do you see a problem here? Because I know that I do, and I would be lying to you if I told you that it isn't frightening to me. This is the journey that sparked my passion for redefining how we see and approach leadership roles. Now, it's important to keep in mind that each of us in a position of leadership or authority holds a level of power, and what we choose to do with that power matters. If we learn and teach the right skills and use that moral compass that we all possessed, we can use the power that we hold to make an incredible impact on those that we are entrusted with in our lives and in our careers. Now, there are many skills that quality leaders should embody: problem solving, conflict resolution, and critical thinking, just to name a few. However, there is one that sticks out in my mind above all the rest, and that is the desire and the ability to love and serve others. Ask yourselves this: if you could leave behind any legacy for yourself, what would it be? Some would say fame, and others may say fortune. Some people seek power and are highly motivated by achievement and success. Now, I used to care about these things, but my perspective has since changed. When I come to the end of my life, I simply want to be able to say that I made a difference in the world. I want to leave behind a legacy of love. Now, anyone who knows me will tell you that I love to love people. I always say that loving people is my superpower. However, it is one that I have had to learn how to use safely and effectively through a lot of trial and error. Now, I am not the gold star standard of this by any means. I still fall short and miss the mark all the time, but it is an area in which I am constantly aiming to grow and improve, and I think that this should be true for all of us. Now, to clarify, when I reference love in this context, I don't mean the kind of love that you would see in a romance novel. I mean the type of love that is pure, sacrificial, and drives us to honor others as ourselves. I am talking about the golden rule of life. Treat others the way that you would like to be treated. And when you fall short, because we all do, and we all will, at least be willing to step up and take accountability for it. Now, each and every one of us has the capacity to lead in some way, shape, or form, whether that be in our workplaces, schools, communities, or even in our homes. While I know I am placing a heavy emphasis on institutions here, the concept of love is universal and it applies to everyone, everywhere. I believe that looking at our respective roles through a lens of love can change the world, one person at a time. Can you imagine the impact that we could have if we all made a conscious decision to want to leave a legacy of love behind us? Now, there are many leadership styles, but I feel that servant leadership is the best way to do just that. Servant leadership is a term coined by management expert Robert K. Greenleaf in a 1970 essay, The Servant as Leader. The Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership defines this as a non-traditional leadership philosophy embedded in a set of behaviors and practices that places the primary emphasis on the well-being of those being served. This leadership style is built on the belief that the most effective leaders make it their primary goal to serve others. In this context, others can mean customers, partners, fellow employees, students, interns, and even the community at large. The most important takeaway is this: true leaders are servants first. This is a sharp contrast from one who is a leader first and is motivated by the need to gain power or acquire material possessions. I believe that a person's ability to be a truly effective leader is directly linked to their ability and their capacity to love others. When genuine care and concern for people are present, you will observe things like empathy, compassion, humility, accountability, patience, kindness, and respect. A lack of these virtues will severely corrode any institution or organization over time, decreasing its effectiveness and driving away even the most dedicated of supporters. Even worse, though, it can leave people wounded, broken, hurting, confused, and betrayed. And this should never be acceptable. The bottom line here is this: those you serve should always come first. The dignity, worth, and safety of people should always come before status, power, title, promotion, or ego. If you want people to be able to lead well, they must first be able to love well. One without the other is unsustainable, and sometimes flat out dangerous. My call to action for you today is this: be accountable, be approachable, be teachable, be honest, be willing to admit when you make a mistake, be quick to make it right, and do not try to evade responsibility or dodge the consequences for your actions. Do not step on people who were good to you while you make your way to the top, and when you make a mistake, just apologize, even if it was unintentional. You can do much good in leadership, but you can also cause immense harm. Ultimately, that choice is yours and can heavily impact the trajectory of someone's entire career and even their entire life. The reality is that leadership is not about you. The moment that those that you serve take a back seat to your own agendas or motives, or someone is harmed under your care, under your leadership, you have failed. My ultimate goal as a leader is to never do to others what has been done to me. Although my life experiences have been painful, they were not in vain. In fact, I can stand before you today and say that I am thankful for every single leader and institution that has harmed me, because they made me want to do better and become a voice for every single person who has been harmed and betrayed at the hands of an institution that they trusted. Even despite the flames that I walked through, I was able to find the beauty in my ashes, and I rose like a phoenix, and it is now my goal in life to help others do the same. As you leave here today, I want you to think about the type of legacy that you want to leave behind. Now, we may not be able to systemically fix the issues that exist within our society or overthrow the hierarchies of our institutions as much as I would like to, but what if we could all be rebels and create a domino effect, using the power and the authority that we all have in our unique spheres of influence to redefine leadership and love people back to life, one crumpled up piece of newspaper at a time.